Hello and welcome to another episode of the 60 Go podcast. My name is Tom Campbell. It's great to have your company. Joining me is Damien Seabold. Seabs, how are you, mates?
Good, mate.
Now, we're now on YouTube as well, so make sure you head over there and subscribe as well. Seabs, we're going to do our last club review for 2023. I tell you what, it's been a long slog, these club reviews. There's so many of them. The Cowboys today. One thing I was looking at about the Cowboys, so obviously they missed the 8 last year, right? So the Cowboys, from 2022 to 2023, they had a great year 2022, but in the difference in the 2 years, they scored 100 less points over the season and they conceded an extra 200. So there was no thing that they did really well throughout the year at all, really.
The other thing I noticed as well, there was an article during the week. It was quite interesting, actually. It was based around all stats and trends and where clubs are heading and what they've been doing over the last 2 seasons. The meters conceded, as well as obviously points conceded, but they tie into each other. But the amount of meters that they're conceding per game is just through the roof. They went from being in the top half a dozen teams to, I think it was second last for meters conceded in the whole competition. So, that's huge.
Absolutely. And the big thing about the Cowboys, they had such a great year in 2022. They made a preliminary final. But the fact that they started the season so poorly. We've talked about teams so far, like Parramatta's another one that started so poorly, and they never really gave themselves a shot of being in the 8. I think they were tied for 8th at one point late in the year, but they'd won an incredible amount of games in a row, and you just can't sustain that. So eventually the wheels were going to come off eventually. And the fact that they weren't in the top 8 for points scored or points against. So the fact that they finished 10th is probably flattering to them.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's a lot of skill there. There's some really talented footy players at that club. I mean, Tom Dearden's is an Origin player, and he was a proven Origin player as well. He did great with the opportunity he got. Drinkwater goes okay. They've got Taumalolo. Townsend's a solid halfback who can steer a ship around, and he's a premiership winner. So they've got key ingredients. They've got some really good young forwards that I think suffered from second or third year syndrome. So some of their back rowers, they did have some injuries in that space. Reuben Cotter was excellent again, but I don't think he was as good as what he was the previous 12 months. But again, he went through a full season, played Origin, went on a kangaroo tour to a World Cup. So there's going to be fatigue there. So, it's tough for blokes to get themselves up and about again. For me, looking at it with the Cowboys, I don't think this is the year that's the anomaly for mine. Like, you look at their last 3 seasons, well, the anomaly was when they actually made the 8, the year that they were actually good. That's the, I think that's the exception to the rule. Otherwise, they're just back to how they were.
That's the tricky part, isn't it? Finding out what they actually are. Are they a genuine top 4 team that can contend in the deep September run, or are they a middle of the road team that might make the 8, might not, can beat a good team on their day, but really consistently is not going to be able to put up performances that warrant a top 4 team. So you're saying that you think they're closer to a middle of the pack team?
Yeah, I do. I just don't think they're that good. Look, it wouldn't shock me if they go on a run. They're a confidence team, so they're a team that when they're up and about and they're high flying, they win. They string wins together. In a game, they can put plenty of points on in 15, 20 minutes because they're that confidence team. But then they'll turn up and they'll just look like a shell of themselves at times. I'm really interested to see how they play out this year, because if they are back to what I think they are, and that's a mid-pack team, and they'll struggle to make the 8, where does that leave what they're doing there? Do changes have to start being made? Are they recruiting the wrong type of player? The questions need to be asked. I think that they are getting the right type of player. I don't know if they're playing a style that suits them, to be honest, because you go through the team. Well, Drinkwater goes good. Valentine Holmes is a star. Dearden's a star. Cotter's a star. Jeremiah Nanai's a star. Reuben Cotter's an Origin player. I think he's a lucky Origin player, but he's an Origin player. They've got decent props there. They've got other good young back rowers that can do a job and actually be good first graders as well. So Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sold on it.
Murray Tuolungi was someone that really stepped up during the Origin period, particularly
Someone I
defensively.
forgot. Yeah,
Yep. So
yeah.
if
He's
he
good.
I've spoken to a couple of people. They think that his future could be at centre. So it'll be interesting to see which way Todd Payton decides to go with him. They did make a couple of key decisions at the end of the year that they had to make. They had to move a couple of people on. Peter Hiku moved on. James Tarmo moved on. So they were starting to become a little bit of dad's army in some certain positions there. So moving those guys on, get some fresh legs in. They do, in my opinion, have a little bit of a problem with their juniors coming through. Their juniors coming through, to me, for the most part, are not banging the door down and demanding selection. There's no Cowboys juniors at the moment that you're saying, wow, they're really
Yeah.
going to be a star.
I suppose though that they sneak up and they can come from nowhere. Like 3 years ago, Jeremiah and I was playing school footy, and he's played Origin and Test footy, so they can come from nowhere. I think that they recruit the wrong young blokes. That's my opinion. They've got a fascination with going the enormous kids, and the enormous kids aren't always the best footballers when they become men. So I think there's a lot of similarities with their recruitment where the Broncos were 7-8 years ago. Instead of looking for, all right, who's going to be a very good first grade footy player for us at 22, 23? They're going for who's the man child, or who's the who's the giant and who destroys juniors, and it doesn't always translate. There's only one Dave Feeder. There's only one Payne Haas. Like they're not normal.
Yeah, they're the exception to the rule. When it comes to the Cowboys, when the Cowboys eventually win a premiership, how many of their current spine will be a part of it?
Well, if they keep Tom Dearden, I mean, because he's got a good 10 years ahead of him still, that's it for me. Like he's the only one from that spine that I can see. Cotter, depending on what
Reece
pieces are
Robson?
around him. Not Cotter, yeah, sorry, Reece Robson, depending on what pieces are around him. Maybe, but I don't see. Well, Townsend's almost done. So if they don't win the comp next year, he's not a part of it.
Yeah.
And for mine, Drinkwater is not someone that I would look at and think immediately premiership winning fullback.
He's got moments of brilliance in him.
He
Scott
does. He's a
Drinkwater.
star. He's a lot like Reece Walsh. They've got moments of brilliance. They can absolutely tear a game apart, and they've got blistering speed, and they've got all the attributes. And I'm not bagging him or saying that he's not a good footy player. I'm just saying, in my opinion, I don't think the spine that they've got there at the moment. Watch me, I'll eat my words. I'll win the comp next year, but they're not I just don't think they're a premiership winning side.
No. Tom Dearden, let's say that this is Chad Townsend's last year at the Cowboys. It probably will be, all things considered.
Yeah.
Do you think Dearden to 7 is a move, or do you think keep him at 5'8"?
Oh, 6, 7, same thing. Really, it's the same thing. One takes a bit more ownership in regards to the game management, which is obviously the 7, and it's Chad Townsend there. But you'd expect that by the time Tom Dearden becomes the chief playmaker and Townsend's gone in a couple of years, he's got the experience under his belt to be able to steer the team around and be the chief playmaker. Whether he wears 6 or 7, it doesn't really matter.
One thing that they need to look at when replacing Chad Townsend for the future partner for Tom Dearden is someone with a really good kicking game, because I love Tom Dearden. He's very, very good. A kicking game is not one of his greatest strengths.
But again, he's a young bloke, so it can come. They're the things that you can work on to improve. So he's not a concern at all for mine because he's so young. Like, he feels like he's been around forever, and I think he's maybe 21, 22 max, if that.
Yep.
So he's not the concern there for me. They're probably when Kyle Felt. So is Kyle Felt going to play? Do you think? Like, is he a part of their best 17, or is he done now?
Look, I personally don't think he's part of their best 17, but he's got a bit of that club legend aura about him that probably gets him a start, at least to start the season, and then see how it goes.
That's right. He probably earned the right to get first crack, hasn't he?
Yeah.
He's been such a good player for so long. The but then obviously when he's done, they start bringing a bit more youth and that bit of extra speed. I think is what they need. So the young fella, trying to think of his name. He played 1 or 2 games. I think Robert Derby's his name. He's got some serious speed. So whether or not he can become a good first grader, that'll help him out because there's that blistering speed. They've got Semi Valemi or Valemai.
Yep.
He's there as well, and he's very quick. So there are things that they can look at. They can look at, as you said, moving Murray Tuolangi into the centres, and then it opens up a couple of wing spots. But yeah, I think a little bit of just blistering speed outside of Valentine Holmes off the mark and drink water is what they really need.
Well, one thing that they did lose as far as blistering speed goes is the hammer. They did lose the hammer, and Tom Gilbert as well, I think, is an underrated loss at the end of last season. They probably underestimated how big of a loss those two guys would be. Imagine if you had Hammer outside of Val Holmes, or Val Holmes and the Hammer in the centers. You'd be kicking goals now. Like one of the most lethal center combos in the game now.
But again, sorry, mate, but sometimes blokes need to move on to really
absolutely
fulfill their potential. Like obviously the Hammer was a star, and you could see that straight away. But from what you hear, there might have been a few things going on up there, and a change was what was needed for him.
Absolutely. What do you expect from the Cowboys for this year? And what's a pass mark?
A pass mark is making the 8.
Yeah.
Like really a team that, same with Parramatta, they're in the same boat. The team that was top 4 18 months ago, they have to be, a top 8 side, or at least pushing for that top 8. I don't. It's going to be really interesting, mate, because I don't think Penrith are going to be as good. Like Penrith are still going to be probably better than everyone, but I don't think it's going to be clear, like it has been the last 4 or 5 years. So I think that gap's going to close. I really don't think Brisbane will be as good as what they were last year. They've got to look, as I said before, Broncos, Cowboys, so many similarities in so many different ways. It'd be interesting to see how they go this year. Again, they should be a top 8 side. Cowboys should be a top 8 side. I think they'll be somewhere between 8 and 12.
Yeah. I think it's probably been, like, I had 7 to 9 written down. I think that they'll be fighting out for the 8th spot. But there's no doubt they need to improve. Like, it's not like that they missed the 8 last year due to a couple of injuries and were unlucky to miss the 8. They were terribly poor in stages. There was one game. There was one game where it was probably a third to halfway through the season. They played the Dolphins, and the Dolphins couldn't have done anything more to let the Cowboys win the game, and the Cowboys didn't get it done. And the Dolphins got out to this crazy lead, and purely just off Cowboys errors, and Cowboys couldn't run them down the end. I think it might have been 18-0 at halftime or 16-0 at halftime, something like that. And it was really all over. And that to me was just like, okay, they're done. Like they cannot make the 8 from here. But there needs to be improvement there, because it's not like they were good enough to make the 8 last year. They were terrible.
And it's not like there's not good footy sides. That's the thing. Like, yeah, we've discussed a few teams. Like, we don't see Raiders being a top 8 side or anywhere near it. Then there's a couple of sides which we just expect to fall away a little bit. Knights are a lottery whether they're a top 8 side again. There are sides that are perceived to be very good footy sides. Let's say Cowboys, Parramatta, Rabbitohs, Manly. So everyone would agree that they look like they're going to be good footy sides. Well, that's 4 teams for 2 spots. You never know. And that's if the Knights fall away, and I don't know if they will. So that's 4 other good sides. There's always a smoky. There's always a team that no one saw coming that just improves out of sight, like the Warriors, whether they're a team that fall away this year. Who knows? Most of the teams in the 8, the teams that we expect to maybe go back a little bit, like Brisbane and Penrith, we're not saying that they're going to fall off a cliff. It's just I don't personally expect them to be as good as what they were this year. They're still going to be good footy sides, and they should be both top 4 teams. So it's it's not an easy comp, and that's why we love watching it, because you just never know what's going to happen. Teams come from nowhere, and obviously, you know, teams improve out of sight, and then the odd team always just falls off a cliff dramatically.
If you take a look at the start to their season, they're away to the Dolphins, at home to Newcastle, then they're away to St. George and away to Brisbane. It's not the worst draw to open up the start of your season with: Dolphins, Knights, Dragons, Broncos. But it's one of those ones where if they get off to a slow start again after that draw, you're starting to ask some serious questions going, hey, lads, you're in trouble here.
There is a couple of sides playing each other there where if they don't win those games, they're in for a tough year. Like if Dolphins aren't winning early games, they're really going to struggle. Dragons don't win early games, the head noise starts immediately. Cowboys don't win early games. It's here we go again. Their season starts terribly, and the other one too for mine is any of those teams going to Vegas. I reckon you want to play them around round 4, 5, because obviously they're going to Vegas, they're coming back. I don't think you again. I could be way off here, but I don't think it'll be that first week that they come back or the first game after they've come back where they struggle. I reckon it'll be round 3 or 4 where you see that dip in performance. Fatigue catches up with them because they're going to be up so high. Their energy will be through the roof. They'll be loving life and feeling good about things. And yeah, come round 4 or 5, that's when I think that they might, hit a little dip.
Absolutely. And for teams that don't have great depth, you need to win early because your depth's only going to get tested later on in the year. So especially a team like
who are going to have origin players, aren't they? So
that's right. Yeah. Cowboys, they're a certainty to have, minimum, you would think three origin players, maybe 4 or 5.
Well, they're going to have, no matter what, they're going to have Cotter, Holmes, I would have thought Tuolungi.
Yeah.
So that's no matter what.
Nanai?
Probably Nanai, probably Cotter.
Yeah.
Robson.
Yeah.
And then you just never know.
You're a Daly Cherry Evans injury away from Tom Dearden getting a run.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah. Or Tom Dearden's liable to be definitely 18th man for a game, isn't he? So you're unavailable straight away.
That's right. They need
to Drinkwater could be 18th man for New South Wales for a game.
That's right. Yeah, they need to bank their wins early. That's for sure. Let us know how you think the Cowboys are going to go in 2024. That's been the 60O podcast, and that is full time.